Welcome to our presentation. For our topic, we chose Uber. Uber, an American company created in 2009, is a transportation of passenger service from a point A to a point B. They have managed to grow at a surprisingly fast rate and become one of the leading companies in the stock market as of today. They made their revenues from the commission they take from each ride, the leasing the drivers use for their cars, and many other services. However, there has recently been a drastic environment change caused by an unknown virus called COVID 19, which caused a change in consumer behavior and lack of rides taken, but also the danger that customers and drivers face while taking each ride during one of the most dangerous pandemic. For that matter, we'll discuss some strategies that we can implement into the organization by first conducting an external analysis, followed by an internal analysis, then the TOES matrix, and finally recommendation and implementation.
In this first section, we have the external analysis. We will begin with the staple C, which is divided in 7 parts. Let's begin with the political analysis. Europe has had political debates globally. Governments around the world are worried about the regulation in this new share economy. On one hand, this has its advantages, but also its counterparts. This is because while Uber is cooperating with the local economy for one sector, at, at the same time it is disrupting another one, the taxi service market. This also has created opposition in several areas of the government scalafons. The regulation and laws sections are facing pressure to bring new laws for these companies. Uber has faced lawsuits because its business model. Uber has achieved to work with the independent drivers and using them, offering and providing services through contractors, saving millions of dollars because these drivers won't have the benefits a regular employee has. Examples of these lawsuits can be seen in California and South Africa. While different circumstances are around the facts, in South Africa the government took action by impounding Uber cars because of the lack of taxi licensing. Because Uber does not have clear regulations, insurance companies are also in check because in case of accident, who is accountable? The company? The driver? Who? While Uber is complying with the minimum wage laws, the government requires commercial license as well, demanding Uber to provide further documentation. Then we have the legal analysis. Legal compliance is a notoriously important factor that has brought large fines for businesses. The Uber business model now in practice has challenged legal authorities. This has taken the government attention into tax filings, human resources issues. For example, in 2015, the local government of California ruled that the company should treat drivers as employees, not contractors. And in France, Uber was fined because of illegal driving and not sufficient permits. Then we have the social analysis. Different macro social factors influence Uber's environment. People behavior have changed in the last decade. People want fast services, easily accessible and on demand. Call it the Uberization of the society. This is a concept referring to adaptation of business models centered specifically around services obtainable via smartphones. Also, demographics have evolved, such as cities being more and more populated, meaning there is a higher demand for transportation. Then we have the ethical analysis. Uber's ethics are often criticized and sometimes even say its business model won't ever allow the app to be ethical for many reasons. First, the background checks they are not good enough and the regulation is not as strong as regular cabs, for instance, which leads to drivers' misconduct. In this case, sometimes sexual assault is in case. Secondly, there is an issue of customer privacy, meaning that Uber drivers don't answer to their duty of respecting customers' privacy because of the God View tool. It means Uber constantly track their customers' location, and the main problem here is the moral because the app did not learn them to know in advance of this situation. Then we have the economic analysis. Uber business model is based on sharing economy, a concept that may change the state of economies, especially in developed countries. It has created additional income opportunities for many people, but at the same time taking away jobs from local taxi drivers. Traditional taxi services had to cut down the rate to remain in competition, as people would opt for cheaper products and services. Then we have the technological analysis. Uber is using highly developed software with a developed IT team. Since Uber is in the business of software of taxis, they are making the app easier for its customers, updated day by day. providing real-time driver tracking with the navigation on the closest local area for customers. Uber provides variety of offerings in the same application. Since nowadays it's easier to copy that software system, it is not something unique, however, not easy and fast to develop either. Therefore, being a competitor needs a lot of investment on marketing and better prices in services. Then we have the competitive analysis. Uber has its own software and developed it at the beginning before other companies in this online taxi industry. First, one is superior user experience with the software also has rating system for drivers, which makes every ride easier for its customers. But since the apps are copied easily nowadays, it is not the case anymore. Uber has huge network effects because they were in the first time in business in the industry. This network effects means the awareness of the customers. Also, Uber has huge brand recognition behind by using the same name on food delivery business, Uber Eats. Operational excellence is the main power of Uber, as providing good quality service. Therefore, it is hard for someone to enter to this market, which makes Uber strong in terms of competitiveness. Then we have the Porous five forces model. Industry, short distance transportation. We will begin with the threat of entry, which is graded high. The threat of new companies entering the industry is high because of the low cost and minimum investment. Some new startups could try to initiate business with different approaches. Threat of substitutes is also rated high. This is our number 2. The threat for substitutes is high because depending on the needs of the customer, they can decide which kind of transportation they are going to take for a specific moment. Direct substitutes for a traditional transportation is taxi, public transport, or your own transport, as the most common. Indirect substitutes, on the other hand, include walking instead of using any transport at all. Moreover, the threat of substitute services increases as the quality increases. Number 3, buyer's power is also rated high. Buyer bargaining power is mainly fueled by the abundance of competition in the industry. Uber customers are highly price sensitive. If Uber decides to increase costs in these attempts to become profitable, considerable numbers of customers may stop using Uber services. Number 4, supplier power, graded low. Bargaining power of ride-sharing supplier is low. Drivers with owned or rented cars are the main suppliers for Uber. There are millions of drivers who would like to drive for Uber, and the bargaining power of each supplier gets low. Number 5, competitive rivalry. It's rated high. The existing companies in the market compete with both suppliers, car drivers, and customers. The trend of concentration of the industry is appearing to be higher than previous years, leading them to compete for customers by increasing quality and giving incentives, such as promotions. Well, we have also main competitors in this section, which is unlicensed taxis, Captain, Hitch, Bolt, BlaBlaCar. As a main substitutes, we have the public transport and traditional taxis. As a conclusion, taking into account increasing popularity of sharing economy and low entry barriers into the ride-hailing industry, it can be argued that the extent of rivalry within the industry is going to be further intensified in medium and long-term perspectives.
This part is for Uber's competitive advantage in the internal analysis. Firstly, Uber lost its sustainable competitive advantage due to many competitors just copying the software, brand image is harmed, and the industry lacks profitability due to regulations. The industry is not profitable as much as the beginning, and because of that, Uber lost the sustainable competitive advantage over their competitors. According to the article of Zupik, Uber recorded almost $3 billion loss from operations in 2016. Secondly, investors are willing to invest in competitors which are using this exact same business model as Uber's. It's really hard for Uber to have a competitive advantage while the brand image is harmed by the delayed Uber campaign, discriminations, and New York Times article that documented passengers getting into a car that they thought was an Uber but was actually driven by a criminal. Therefore, Uber expands its business into the new markets such as food delivery service Uber Eats. Here, we are seeing all stakeholders of Uber in the graph. Firstly, let's begin with the minimal effort section. Car companies and low-income customers have the lowest level of power and interest because they don't have any direct power to change anything in Uber. Also, they are not interested either because they are not depending on Uber. Low-income customers, if they have the option of cheaper transportation, they will choose that option. So they don't care at all about Uber. Secondly, let's continue with the keep informed section. Employees have high level of interest where they don't have that much power at the same time because one individual employee cannot change anything for Uber. Uber is a software company, so employees don't have direct power over them. Thirdly, we are looking into the keep satisfied section. There are loyal customers, part-time drivers, system and service providers, which are playing a huge role for Uber. Since they have a high level of power, they are important for Uber, so Uber needs to make sure to satisfy them. Finally, we are looking into the key players section, which are fundamentals and main characters for Uber. There are shareholders, government, software developers, and full-time drivers. They are a must for Uber, so Uber needs to give huge care for those.
Uber's company's culture have had a great amount of good critics along the years, proved by a considerable success. However, it doesn't come without its inconveniences. As you can see here displays the pros and the cons of the company's cultures. With pros such as we build globally, we live locally, we celebrate differences, we act like owners, we persevere, and many more. But they also have cons such as criminal investigation and legal liabilities, sexism, sexual harassment, and gender inequality issues, negative response to local government decision, and many more.
Now for the Taos matrix analysis. The first strength and opportunity is that there are new big exploitable markets in countries where taxi services are expensive or inconvenient. So there, Uber could use its brand recognition to exploit them. Also, Uber's core is technology, so they can develop self-driving cars to enhance user experience. A weakness that is also opportunity is that there is a real dependency on drivers, and they have an unpredictable behavior. But at the same time, Uber could develop self-driving cars to eliminate this particular weakness. There's a strength and threat. That is that they have low operational costs, but the problem is it could be the case for any other company in the same industry. So it's not leverageable. Also, their low prices disturb governments, but the good point is that Uber is too big to ban because of their strong customer base. For the weaknesses and threats, the relation between Uber and its drivers is interdependent, yet ethically questionable. It results in dissatisfied drivers and they might lose them to rivals. Also, Uber have really low research and development expenses, which results in a fragile place for them in the industry. Now for the key strategic issues. We selected three that were the most relevant. The first one is the strength and opportunity that Uber can develop self-driving cars. So this competitive advantage emerged from the culture and of innovation as well as the technological environment of the transportation industry. The second key strategic issue is that since the prices are lower than traditional taxis, it can be a starter for uprising and government may regulate or put taxation. This emerged from the legal, economical, and social factor from the macro environment, as well as from the cultural aspects of the company. Finally, the last key strategic issue that we chose is that Uber is dependent on their drivers, which is a weakness and a threat, and they have an ethically questionable relationship with them. And This emerged from the legal and social factors of the microenvironment, as well as Uber's culture that is often described as toxic.
We've developed several options for each key strategic issue, and for the first key strategic issue, our options were either to buy a smaller company that produces self-driving cars, or to produce their own self-driving cars with the technological resources and competences, or to do a strategic alliance with a company that produces self-driving cars like Tesla. For the second key strategic issues, Uber could apply different programs where drivers would have insurances. Depending on the amount of money they generate a month, they can qualify for certain benefits. Secondly, rewards, pay, and motivation. Uber could reduce the fee charged to the drivers for each travel to guarantee better income to their drivers and keep up to date their cars and better comply with the company's requirements. Lastly, would be to fix their toxic culture. For the third key strategic issue, our options were either to have a minimum tariff that can indeed be set jointly with unions, or Uber can bring more regulations and limitations for their application to filter better. Also, another factor of their ban in some countries is due to unfair competition, mostly towards licensed taxis. So a solution could thus be having a less aggressive competitive strategy, since virtually anyone without a criminal record can become an Uber driver without a taxi authorization. And finally, Uber can become a software provider, so they can shift into providing software for the local taxi companies in that area and shift towards delivery industry with Uber Eats. We've evaluated our options using a low, medium, high scale, and we chose the options that scored highest in terms of feasibility, suitability, and acceptability. Our recommendation would be that Uber can become a software provider for taxi companies and shift towards delivery industry with Uber Eats. And to begin any successful change process, we must first start by understanding why the change must take place. As Lewin put it, motivation for change must be generated before change can occur. One must be helped to re-examine many cherished assumptions about oneself and one's relations to others. This is the unfreezing stage from which change begins. So in general, Uber hasn't been able to make profits, and based on the analysis of Porter's 5 forces, the transportation industry isn't very attractive, and the competition is very high. In addition, by analyzing the macro environment, multiple lawsuits have been filed against Uber. There is a wide range of rules and regulations related to employee health and safety, consumer protection laws, employment laws, and competitive rules and regulations that need to fully adhere by Uber. Changes in these rules and regulations are most likely to impact Uber performance in direct and indirect manner and in ways that are difficult to predict. In addition, Uber's business model is based on sharing economy, a concept that may change the state of economies, especially in developed countries. The economic impact of the global transportation technology company are controversial. Uber has created additional income opportunities for many people at the same time as taking away jobs from local taxi drivers. And since prices are lower than traditional taxis, it can be a starter for the uprising, and government may regulate or put taxation. In the change phase, Uber cannot afford any of these losses anymore, so we would recommend that Uber uses their skills in technology and innovation to provide taxi companies with their software and move towards the delivery industry, focusing on Uber Eats. By selling their software, they can start gaining profits and invest more in Uber Eats, and this would eliminate all the threats that Uber might face in the future. So, Uber should make sure that all stakeholders are embracing this change and keep everyone informed and supported. The focus on the technology and selling their software is transforming Uber's business and operating model.
So, in conclusion, after deep analysis and many researches, we have found many different options, such as sell software for taxis, continue with that license, get a license, or even move from transportation to only Uber Eats, which is all strategies that could help Uber's organization. So now in the next slides, you will be able to see the references we used for our researches.